Okay, so now we're going to leave Norway and go to the other side of the world, to a country which in some ways, you may be surprised, but is quite similar to Norway, and that is Brazil. Now, in what ways could Brazil possibly be similar to Norway? Well, we won't make political jokes. We will look at the energy system. It's a massive hydropower economy, Brazil. It has a lot of fossil fuels as well, oil and gas. And the other thing that it's not similar is biofuels, so hold that thought. You might be interested in biofuels. This is the man to talk to. He used to run the Brazilian National Energy Planning Agency, and he's currently CEO of an energy consultancy. Please welcome Luiz Barroso.
So, hello, everyone. Good morning. It's super nice to be here in Norway. I always feel home when I'm here. I visited Trondheim 17 years ago, and in TNU, so this is one of the best places of the world to be. I'm really, really passionate about this country. But I come from Brazil, like 11,000 kilometers away. Precisely, I come from this company, PSR. And we are based in Rio. Actually, our offices are exactly where all Brazilians live, which is in front of the beach. So this is what I see out of my window every day. We are an 85-person people company, and basically we do consulting, we do research, and we work in about 70 countries. And we do a lot of work in Norway as well. And before joining PSR, as mentioned before, I was with the Brazilian government, so I've been to the two sides of the table, which has given me some more, I would say, humbling experience, to say the least, because going from theory to implementation is not easy. But Brazil and Norway, we have a lot of things in common, as mentioned before. I will try to go in this presentation to those challenges that we're having there, so that you can see a different flavor of the same storyline that Asgar has just mentioned in his presentation. So Brazil, this is the country, and I live right here in Rio, where the crisis is. But that's a big country in terms of area. Brazil is literally equally to the whole continental US plus half of Alaska, 8.5 million square kilometers of area, 200 million inhabitants, so lots of people. Most of them live exactly here by the beach. And we host 60% of the Amazon rainforest. We have a new government since 2019, a bit controversial one, but we do have a new one. And our GDP has grown last year plus 1%, and we had a big recession actually in the country from 2014 to 2016, where GDP almost shrunk about 10%, that's serious, due to very poor economic policies that were in place. That's why growing 1% for us is a big deal. We are about the 8th largest economy worldwide, with about a 2 trillion worth of GDP. Electrification of the economy is still very little, about 17%. There's a lot of room to increase on that. Little need for heating, as you can imagine. We don't need any heating at all. Actually, everybody is almost semi-naked at the beach most of the time because of the warm weather. I did the transition from coming to Rio, 42 degrees of temperature Celsius, to this -2, -1 temperature here in Trondheim. I've been having lots of fun in the snow, which is super nice. And we are 5 times world champion of soccer. But I have just realized that Norway, the Norwegian soccer team, is the only team that has never lost against Brazil, ever. Yes, and Norway has actually beaten Brazil twice. So that's, useless culture. But anyhow, going ahead, what is interesting about Brazil, we are pretty renewable in energy already today, 43% on the total primary energy supply. These are the sources that we have, pretty much the standard. But when we go to the electricity side, the party becomes more interesting, because 77% of the country's power matrix is already renewable today. The hydropower is basically the star. It's the mainstream renewable technology that we have. We have big hydro plants, large reservoirs, cascaded with multiple ownerships, and our reservoirs can transfer water from 1 year to the other, sometimes up to 3-4 years ahead. So big lungs, a lot of storage capacity. Looks like a country that we are here today, right? Like this Norway. But that's the logic. And what is interesting about Brazil is that these are also the same resources that we have for system expansion. So the country has a huge portfolio of resources still to be available for planning in the future. And because of this renewable paradise, Brazil has never ever set any formal target for renewable penetration, as opposed to many countries, as some European ones. And actually, even our nationally determined contribution in the Paris Agreement is economy-wide. We don't have a target for each sector of the economy. We have a global target of reduction of CO2 emissions, and there are different pathways that we can get there, depending on the most cost-effective decision. So these are the consequences of a country that is today with a renewable participation in its matrix that most countries in the world would like to reach in still some decades, which gives us, as Norway, a big competitive advantage in the low-carbon economy. Now, what is interesting about the Brazilian power sector is exactly what was mentioned before by Oscar. Hydro with a storage plus transmission. This gives us the big backbone and the big opportunity to integrate renewables in a cost-effective way. The country is completely interconnected by 130,000 kilometers high-voltage transmission system, and the Brazilian hydro reservoirs are used to modulate and to smooth out the seasonal and intermittent variation of renewables production, which for us, you see here, and the typical production profile of hydros. This is the dry season. This is when biomass from sugarcane is producing. This is production from wind. This is a typical production for solar. That's a beautiful portfolio where renewables, they are able to deliver more in the dry season, which reduces the net load that is supplied by the hydros with the storage, thus making hydro scheduling more effective. And we have been using this portfolio effect, which also holds with loads, because the solar is very much correlated with air conditioning, for example. Sun is shining when air conditioning is on, 42 degrees Celsius, as you can imagine, 85% humidity. We need air conditioning, before we need anything else in life. And we have been using this portfolio in different time scales to try to take the most out of renewable sources in the country. And we have been even calling the reservoirs, the hydro reservoirs, as energy warehouses, where these warehouses can basically store anything. They can store wind, solar, biomass, and etc. in a cost-effective way. These friends from the International Renewable Energy Agency have done actually an interesting report on that, exploring the complementarity between hydro and other renewables. This is a focus only in Latin America to start, but this report is pretty general, and I think the concepts applied there are valid for other countries as well. Now, the beauty of having this big portfolio has enabled Brazil to, back in the day, about 12 years ago, actually 14 years ago, in 2005, to test what has later become this big virus in the world, which is this renewable energy auctions, I think, which back in the day, we had to find a way to attract new capacity because electricity load growth in Brazil is about 5% per year. We need to integrate something around 4,000 megawatts of new generation capacity per year to keep up with the load growth, with economic growth as well. And forward contracting via electricity auctions has been playing a very active role in Brazil, as in other countries. This has also been highlighted a lot by the International Renewable Energy Agency. And for Brazil has been very natural to use this mechanism of giving to the renewable and also conventional generation long-term contracts to take away the market risk and to work more on the competition to lower the weighted average capital cost, or at least the capital cost, because Brazil has always lived under the zero marginal cost society forever because of the hydro participation in its matrix and because of a policy uncertainty. So merchant investment in the country is not that popular, and most of new generation investments come via those long-term PPAs, which is a way to handle risk. And the implementation of these auctions, which are valid for all technologies, not only for renewables, has been very successful. We've been sourcing a lot of renewables, more than 18,000 megawatts contracted at very competitive prices. You have an outlook of them here, but rough numbers, $35 per megawatt hour you can buy in a wind facility onshore. We're still going to get this later to offshore. But if you look to Brazil in the future, and this is basically, I'm finishing the presentation, the kind of a future exercise that I try to make, how we can decarbonize the country in a very abstract way. Here you have the segments, so the industry, commerce and residential loads and transportation. And we already have a renewable power sector. Here you have the renewable share in each of these sectors of the economy. And the equation, at least in my mind, would be the following. First, we already have a green power sector with a transmission playing a tremendous role. A green power sector, renewable power sector, gives a lot of opportunity to electrify the economy and using energy efficiency together with renewable heat and renewable electricity and distributed energy resources to decarbonize the segments here as a byproduct of the sugarcane production, which feeds basically cogeneration from sugarcane bagasse. We can get biofuels, and biofuels, for me, they are more useful in Brazil for the light fleet, because most light vehicles, they are already flex fuel already today, so we have the pumping network stations already implemented in the country, and electrification of the economy can leave us to use electric vehicles for the urban fleet, more buses. And the trucks, frankly speaking, I don't know what to do with the trucks. Trucks may be electrified, maybe biofuels. But the interesting question is what to do about with the gas, because Brazil also has all those plentiful resources of gas located in the pre-salt fields. And gas, of course, may have a role. And the role of gas in Brazil, in my opinion, goes on the power sector and also in the industry, but with a little caveat, because Brazil has a lot of sources that can be candidates for system expansion. The gas opportunity is very much related to the opportunity cost of its economic value compared to the alternatives. And the alternatives can be green alternatives, natural alternatives that are already available in Brazil. This will be a big discussion for gas. I haven't talked about, for example, bio-CCS, which can be a good combination for the country as well. This is topic for our panel, but this is the final slide of my presentation. What we have learned, what does the energy transition mean for a country that has already done the energy transition, by the way, basically means to try to integrate more and more renewables in a cost-effective way, maximizing the portfolio of existing and new resources. I really think that a mix of planning actions with market-based instruments will be needed. So a mix of planning action is very much referred to policy actions as well. And integration will be the big word, together with the economic recognition of the value of hydro resources. For us, Brazil needs to do a lot of homework on bioenergy, which is definitely the sleepy giant energy source that the country has not taken a lot of use of still. But pragmatism, price signals, and market efficiency, together with the stakeholders' engagement, will be the key for success. With this, I thank you very much for your attention, and it's again a pleasure to be here.
Luiz, thank you so very much. So not so different from Norway in many ways. Already a lot of renewables in the power sector. So how do you make that go into the rest of society? You can put those questions to him. Something he did not mention was politics, did you notice? So we all know about the new president, Jair Bolsonaro, and he is a signed-up member of the Trump fan club, and one of the significances of that is that he is a friend of fossil fuels. So it's all the things that we just heard from Luiz, are they all going to go up in smoke? You could very well ask him that. How does politics and planning come together? All right?